Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The study was silent, save for the shuffling of papers in Mr. Preston's hands. I sat in the corner, gripping the edge of my chair as my stepmother Elaine and stepsister Catherine radiated smugness. The will reading of my grandfather, Jonathan Bradbury, felt more like a performance, one they were confident they'd scripted. As per the last will and testament of Mr. Jonathan Bradbury, Mr. Preston began, adjusting his glasses, the majority of the estate, including Bradbury Manor, shall be inherited by Catherine Bradbury. Catherine's lips curled into a triumphant smile. Well, that's no surprise, she said, her voice dripping with false modesty. I felt my stomach drop. And me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Preston hesitated. To Nancy Bradbury, your grandfather has left a collection of family photographs and personal effects. The room spun. Photographs? Catherine's laughter cut through my haze. It's only fair, she said. Grandfather knew who truly cared for him. Anger bubbled in my chest, but before I could speak, Mr. Preston cleared his throat. There is one additional matter, he said, standing. Mr. Bradbury left instructions regarding a personal safe. Catherine's confidence faltered. Safe? What safe? Mr. Preston approached the portrait of my grandmother and carefully lifted it from the wall, revealing a sleek, hidden safe. The combination, he said, is Nancy's birthday. The air thickened as he entered the numbers. With a soft click, the safe opened, revealing a USB drive and an envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I reached for the letter. What is this? Elaine demanded, stepping forward. If it's in the safe, it belongs to Catherine. Actually, Mr. Preston interjected, his voice firm, the will explicitly states these items are not part of the inheritance. They were left under separate instructions. I unfolded the letter, my grandfather's familiar handwriting staring back at me. Whatever secrets it held, I knew they would change everything. The room seemed to shrink as I unfolded the letter. My grandfather's bold handwriting filled the page, and each word felt like a weight on my chest. My dearest Nancy, it began, if you are reading this, then my fears have come true. Elaine and Catherine are not who they claim to be. They have deceived me and our family for years. Inside this safe, you will find the evidence to uncover the truth. I looked up, my hands trembling. Catherine's face was a mixture of anger and unease. What does it say? She demanded, stepping closer. I ignored her and reached for the USB drive, handing it to Mr. Preston. Can we view what's on this? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Mr. Preston inserted the USB drive into the computer, and the monitor illuminated with rows of folders labeled fraud, payments, and correspondence. My heart pounded as he opened the first folder. The air in the room grew thick with tension, and Elaine's hands clenched tightly on her lap. This is absurd, Elaine said sharply. Jonathan was clearly not in his right mind. Let's see what he thought, Mr. Preston replied curtly. He opened the folder, and a video began to play. My grandfather appeared on the screen, his face weary but resolute. Nancy, he said, looking directly into the camera, I uncovered the truth about Elaine and Catherine, or rather, Pamela Benson, an actress posing as Catherine. The real Catherine Bradbury was adopted at birth. I've gathered evidence of their scheme, including altered documents and recorded conversations. The next document was a bank statement. These payments, Mr. Preston said, pointing to the screen, were made monthly to a Margaret Benson, Pamela's real mother. They began 5 years ago. This is ridiculous, Catherine, or Pamela, shouted, lunging toward the computer. Mr. Preston blocked her path, his voice firm. Sit down, or I will call security. He clicked on another file, a recording labeled Conversation, March 3rd. The audio crackled to life. It was my grandfather's voice. Elaine, he said sternly, I know you've been lying about Catherine. I've seen the real birth certificate. Who is Pamela Benson, and why is she pretending to be my granddaughter? Elaine's recorded response was sharp. You have no proof. No one will believe you over us. The room erupted into chaos. Elaine jumped to her feet, shouting, This is all fabricated. Sit down. Mr. Preston commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. This evidence was verified by Jonathan himself. There's more. He opened another file, an email chain between Elaine and a private investigator. My breath caught as I read the words aloud. Make sure the real Catherine Bradbury never discovers her true identity. We can't risk her interfering. Pamela's face paled. I didn't know about that, she cried. It was all her idea. Liar. Elaine hissed, turning on her supposed daughter. You were in on this from the beginning. Mr. Preston opened the final file, the true will. It was digitally signed and dated just weeks before my grandfather's passing. Everything, the estate, the properties, the company, was left to me with one condition. I must find the real Catherine Bradbury and make things right. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. Elaine slumped into her chair, and Pamela's facade shattered into panicked denial. But I felt something else. Resolve. My grandfather had trusted me to uncover the truth, and I wouldn't let him down. The study was deathly silent as Mr. Preston rose from his chair, holding a printed copy of the true will. Elaine's composure cracked as her eyes darted to Pamela, who now sat motionless, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Elaine Bradbury and Pamela Benson, Mr. Preston began, his tone sharp and unwavering. You are hereby accused of fraud and identity theft, as evidenced by the documents Jonathan Bradbury meticulously collected. The authorities will handle the rest. Elaine surged to her feet, slamming her hands on the desk. You think you can take everything from me? I built this life. Jonathan owed me for years of being ignored and undervalued. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. You didn't build anything, you schemed and stole, Elaine. Grandfather trusted you, and you betrayed him. Pamela stood abruptly, tears glistening in her eyes. I didn't want this. She forced me into it. I just wanted a better life. Better life? I shot back, anger rising. By lying, stealing, and pretending to be someone you're not, you knew what you were doing, Pamela. The tension reached a boiling point as two uniformed officers entered the room. Mrs. Bradbury, Miss Benson, one officer announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. Elaine's face twisted with fury as she pointed a trembling finger at me. This isn't over, Nancy. You'll regret this. No, I said quietly, watching as the officers began to escort them out. The only regret here is yours. As the door closed behind them, the weight of the confrontation began to lift. Mr. Preston handed me the true will, his expression softening. Your grandfather believed in you, Nancy. He knew you'd see this through. I nodded, clutching the document. He gave me more than an inheritance, I murmured. He gave me the truth. And now I have a responsibility to make things right. 1 week later, I stood outside the modest coffee shop in the heart of Seattle, clutching the photo album my grandfather had left behind. Inside, seated by the window, was a young woman with dark curls and a kind smile. Her name was Catherine Bradbury, the real Catherine. My heart raced as I pushed the door open, the bell overhead chiming softly. Miss Bradbury? I asked, approaching her table. She looked up, her expression curious yet cautious. Yes, and you are. I'm Nancy. I began setting the photo album on the table between us. I believe this belongs to you. And there's a story I need to tell you. Her fingers brushed the cover of the album as she opened it, revealing pictures of our grandfather in his youth, the estate, and finally, a photograph of him holding a baby. Her eyes widened. This is my birth name, she whispered. But how? I took a deep breath and told her everything, about Elaine and Pamela's schemes, the evidence my grandfather had gathered, and his final wish for her to reclaim her rightful place in the family. Catherine listened in stunned silence, her hands trembling as she turned the pages. I never knew, she said softly, her voice breaking. I always wondered about my past, but I never imagined this. Grandfather wanted you to have the chance to choose, I said gently. Whether you want to be part of this family or not, that's up to you. Catherine looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. And you? Do you want me to be part of it? I smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. I think grandfather's greatest gift wasn't the inheritance. It was giving us a chance to know each other. As we talked late into the evening, sharing stories and discovering the threads of connection between us, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The shadows of betrayal and deceit were fading, replaced by something brighter, hope. Together, Catherine and I would honor our grandfather's legacy, not just by rebuilding the family's name, but by creating a bond that no one could break. For the first time, I understood what my grandfather had truly meant. Success wasn't about wealth or power. It was about doing what was right. And in finding Catherine, I'd gained something far greater than an inheritance. I'd gained a sister.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.